Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? It's Saturday afternoon, and I'm doing what I normally do at the weekend. I get my knives out, have a little think about what videos I'm going to make for the week, or what I'm going to make for just that day for now. And I started doing. I've wanted to do this one for quite a while, um, because I do more traditional now than I do fixed blade. Although I have another fixed blade coming this week. Um, But this is for this really is for people who not necessarily who have just come into the hobby, but people who want to try traditional knives and are not sure which way they want to go. And what I've done is I've picked 10 knives here. Now, this is going to be, now it's a wee bit more expensive in the UK, so forgive me, it is cheaper in the States, but this is under £200, 10 knives. And this is enough to get you started in traditional patterns. This is enough to get you going because I've got the popular models and I have a couple of wee bonus ones at the end. But this is between 150 and £200. If you can buy them secondhand, it becomes much cheaper. It really does, because if somebody's selling their Roughriders off, they're always going to be cheaper than what you get in the shop, and you'll pick them up for about £10 to go. So you could have this selection for probably £100. But to buy new, it's about £200. But it's a great way of getting in. And the nice thing is, you don't really have to spend, much more than £20. So you can build this collection up over time whenever you can afford it. And that's the nice way to start in traditional knives. Because every one of these knives that I'm going to show you are genuine knives. They cut things. I don't know, that sounds silly, but everybody keeps thinking a lot of these are Roughriders. There's Marbles, there's Colt, there's Queen, which are now made by Roughrider. So these are all very budget, but they're very budget knives that work and cut. They're maybe standard of quality compared to your Case and your GEC. They're not up to that standard, but they're a standard that anybody can use and carry, and they look every bit as good. And that's what I rabbit on about them, but they're a great gateway into this traditional, and not even a gateway. If you want to know about knives and their history, you have to start at traditional, because there was no lock-in knives not that long ago. There was no locket knives. There was no pocket clips. People would be scared when they realised it's probably the 60s before a pocket clip came in. And it's quite scary. The 1960s, pocket clips came in. Who knew? But these are the sort of things you find out when you get into traditional. So what I've done is I've picked 10 of what I think is a great way to start. And what I'll do is I'll list that 10 down in the description down below, so that in the order that I'm going to do them, I'll list them, so that if you need to go back and find out which one's which, I'll do it. So that'll be the top row up here, and this is the bottom row near my fat belly, just so as you know. So we're going to start in the top row, and probably the most famous of them all is the Barlow. And that it's designated a Barlow by the big bolster. And that's to give the knife rigidity, because this was a working man's knife and there was more pressure put in the top, so they put the bigger Barlow on, because back in the days the materials maybe weren't that as good as they are now. But so the big bolster gave it a bit of rigidity so you could do a bit more heavy work. Before this it was quill knives and things like that, and I can show them in another video. But this was a working knife for most men. It has a small pen blade, which was used for sharpening quills and things like that. So that's where that originated from. But now it's great if you just want to open a letter or whatever, cut a bit of string. The little pen blade is useful. And then you have a clip point. Now, Barlows don't just come in clip points, they come in spear points, different blades. And the modern day, we're starting to exaggerate. They get more than what they would have done in the beginning. But it's a beautiful clip point. And it makes for a full grip. The Barlow's probably the smallest one I have here, but I can still get 4 fingers around the Barlow, and I can use this for any task in my day. I'm not a heavy user, so this will do any task in my day. This knife will last me. I don't need another knife. I have 2 knives. The steel on these is not the highest. It's somewhere in, they're 400 steel, the 420, the 440A. They don't last forever at all, but you can sharpen them, and you can carry little tools about you there, as you've seen in some of my videos, to give them a quick sharpen, or a bit of leather and give them a strop, and it'll bring them back into use again. But the nice thing about these is that, you know, they're cheap, and it gets you in to see whether you're going to like it before you go. Now, this is a queen one, which Roughrider have now bought. These are a bit more expensive because the material, the bone on this is just, look at that saw cut bone. These are a bit more expensive because the materials they used and the shiny bolsters, the shiny blades, you know, it takes a bit more effort to make a knife look this well. Lovely shield put in and fitted beautifully. So, do I recommend this one? It doesn't matter. You're only starting. If you want to go the cheapest route you can get, go the cheapest route you can get. But a Barlow is a knife that is a great knife to start with, to let you see what it's like. And then if you want a multi-bladed knife, if you're somebody who in their day's work might want different shaped blades for whatever jobs you're doing, this is a great woodworker's sort of knife, if you like. So you have a spay blade, which was used for castrating, but it's a nice rounded blade. You have the sheep's foot, and then you have another long, elegant clip point. And that can let you poke, pry, do whatever you want. You've got a selection of 3 blades, but you've also got 3 sharp blades with you. This will get most people through any day at all. So, there we go. And I'm not spending a whole lot of time, because these are just, most people are going to have heard of these. The Barlow. And the next one is a Canoe. Now, this is a lovely 2-bladed knife. You have a pen blade, and then you have a spear point blade. And a lot of these blades, the pen and spear points, get confused. It doesn't matter. There's a small blade and a big blade. It doesn't matter. Don't worry too much about the specifics. This is another queen one. This one is a Roughrider in green micarta, which is beautiful materials, but, you know, in a 15-pound knife, you just can't beat it. So the 2-bladed Canoe, and it's called a Canoe because it looks like a canoe shape. You can see the 2 ends of the canoe with the blades in the centre. And the nice thing about this one is, a lot of knives have, I'll show you one. Oh, the first 2 I've got are bad. There we go. Here's a Barlow knife. Can you see the blade is sticking up? On a Canoe knife, it doesn't, because they go into the bolsters. Because these are raised, it hides the tang. So if you've got things that would catch in your pocket, a Canoe is a great knife to do. Again, this is a queen one. That's why it looks so good in that saw cut bone. Here's another knife with the same sort of aesthetics as the tangs of the knife are hidden. This is a Jackknife, and a Jackknife is where both blades, or 3 blades or 4 blades, all come from the one end. Anything that comes from one end is a Jackknife. A single blade is a Jackknife. 2 blades. And here you have a clip point, and this is what they call a California clip or a Turkish clip. There's so many names for these slim and slender blades. But you have 2 really good side blades that come from the one end. And you'll see that one end, like the Canoe, it has the raised part of the cap there is raised, so that when it's closed, your blades are hidden and there's no protruding bit of metal to catch anything in your pocket. So that's a beautiful knife, and this is in bone, in green bone, jigged bone. And Roughriders and Marbles Nut, when they say they're bone, they are bone. They're cow bone. They're jigged to look like stag or whatever they want them to look like, saw cut, and then they're dyed. But they are genuine bone handles. So, I mean, just to get the work that goes into just getting that bone, you know, for a 15-pound knife, that's a lot of work. So that's why I love Roughrider, Marbles, Colt, all them brands now, because the work that they put in to give us a knife like this is astounding. It really is astounding, and it doesn't look much more beautiful than that. So there we go. The next knife is just a single bladed clip, but this is like a gunstock. And the gunstock, the reason I'm going to say it's a gunstock, you have it thin up at the top, and then it goes into like the, if I hold it sideways there, it's like the stock of the gun, the back end, the butt of the gun. It's not particularly clear in this one, but it's more, I've got this one for, this is a single working blade. This is quite a thick blade compared to some of the others. It's hollow ground, so you got a nice thin edge, but it's a knife that you can pry and work. And all these knives I can get 4-finger grips on. This is just a stunning clip. This can get plenty of work done. Again, this will do me all my day. But I always have a little sharpening pen just in case. But you can sharpen on a lot of things that you maybe haven't even thought of. A bit of wet and dry in the back pocket to take with you. That's all you need to bring an edge back in a knife. It's a great thing to throw in your wallet. A little square of wet and dry. Take it with you and you can sharpen any one of these because the blade steel is soft enough to let you do that. It's just a tip, but it's the tips that I use. A bit of wet and dry, or sometimes I take a wee pen sharpener, which I find fantastic for sharpening your knives up, topping your knives up. So there's your first 5 knives in a collection of traditional knives. If you go and get the 5 knives like that, similar to that, you're well on the way. You'll know by now, is this what I'm going to like? Is this what I'm going to like? And you don't have to go any further than that if you don't like them. But you'll also have 5 knives that you can relate to back and forward in your knife collection with your traditional knives. So I'm going to move on now. I like single blades because that's what I carry most. Bulkier, 3-bladed Stockmans, not that they're bulky or too heavy, but I don't usually need 3 blades in one day. So, but some people do, and that's why I've given the choice there. Some of my favourite single-bladed knives is this bullet end jack or teardrop jack, whichever way you want to call it. It's got a beautiful big spear point on it, a lovely handle. One of the most comfortable knives that are made by any brand is that teardrop. It fills up the back of your hand. It gives you a good substantial grip, and it gives you a nice big blade that is useful for everything. It's got a bit of belly, it's got straight, it's got a point, so you can do all the things that you'll ever want a knife to do. And this is lovely. This is in gunshot bone or shotgun bone. You can see that it's all pitted. It's lovely and gives a really good grip to the knife. Lovely shield as well. So lovely. And a lot of these knives you'll see that Roughrider do are frosted. Can you see that? It's just got Roughrider in it. Sometimes it has whatever the knife is designated on the blade. So there's a lovely knife. And here's one that I've just got recently. Still a bit of muck coming out of it. You can see there's still a bit of muck coming out. Roughriders and the likes of these cheaper knives, you have to clean out with oil a lot when you first get them because they've been lying in the store and they're full of all the... This is in carbon steel. A lot of people, myself included, with GEC get used to carbon steel, and I love carbon steel. Strops up brilliantly well, lasts a good amount of time, and this is a work knife. This is what I call a ram's foot. One, because it's thinner down here and thicker at the end. A lot of people might call this a sheep's foot. To me, this is a ram's foot because it is thinner here and thicker here. Beautiful handle. It's like a sway back, but it's not over swayed. Some sway back knives come out, in a real pronounced fashion. This is just about perfect because it gives me belly enough when I'm holding here. I've got the belly of the knife in the fingers of my hand, and I can get great pressure. But if I turn around and I want to do a pull cut, so if I'm going to work with wood during the day and I maybe want to do pegs or something like that, this is a great knife because you get a great pull with it. And I just think that is a beautiful knife. Only just got that. And it's in my Carta. It's got blue liners. If you look at the top there, you look in the back of the blade here, it has lovely blue liners under the micarta. The fit and finish of every one of these is really, really good. And, yes, you'll sometimes get them that you get gaps in the back. But as long as the knife's working for that price, for £15, And I'm just saying that as an average price. Don't expect perfection every time, but if the knife's good, you've got a good, whether it's a half stop or a full cam tang. The half stop just means it stops at the right angle on the way back, and a cam tang means that it goes from open to closed without a stop. That's a cam tang. The next knife is probably the most popular. Well, it is. It's the most popular knife in the world. And this is a trapper. There's more of these bought, not because it's the best knife in the world, but it's because of the advertising space that companies can advertise on this knife. This is just a black bone. It is smooth black bone. It is lovely. It's different on both sides, but it is a beautiful knife. You have that big splay blade, which again, we all know it sprays. And if you don't, it was for neutering animals. And then you have that long, slender clip point, which is useful for so many other tasks because it has the nice big belly on it. But this is a much bigger knife. If you can see in the hand, there's me at the bottom of it here, and the top is there. So you get an extended full grip. It's a great work knife. If you're going to use a knife a lot during the day, the trapper is a great pattern. But they also come in mini trappers, which are a bit smaller. They're just, the mini trapper will come up to about the bottom of the bolster, and you can get very large ones. There we go. And then the nice thing that I like about these lesser companies, they also do knives that are job specific. And when you go back in history to, in traditional knives, and I hope that's what you'll do because it's so interesting. But here's an example of a job specific knife. This is what's called the doctor's knife. And as you can see, you have a lovely clip point up here, and then you have a spatula, tongue depressor, tablet sorter outer. Let's take away the main blade. Oh, I've just cut myself. Yeah, good lad. They're really sharp knives too. The spatula was used by the chemist, the doctor, for sorting tablets out. It could have been used as a tongue depressor. There's so many uses for a spatula to stir things up. To me, if you're out for a cocktail, what a lovely way to stir your cocktail is take that, plus you have a knife for cutting your lemons or whatever up for it. I'm bleeding now like a little stuffed pig. And I don't even have a plaster sitting beside me. But it just shows you that I keep these sharp because they're working knives and they will last you a day. But that's a lovely, slim, elegant, if you're going out somewhere and you wanted to stick it in your pocket to cut your steak even. But there's a lovely knife. And here's probably one of the most famous knives that everybody knows. Let me just hold that. There's the camp knife, and this is the Roughrider camp knife. The bottle opener needs adjusted on it because it's not that great. But it's a bottle opener, it's a can opener, it's you have a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver. You have an awl or a punch, whichever you want to call, which is great for putting holes in leather belts or anything like that. And then you have a beautiful big spear point to do as much work as you like. And you get that all in one nice package. There we go. They're all fitted in there. Lovely. Really nice. Again, this is just basic black bone jigged. But you can hang this on the side of your bags or wherever you want to do, or on a keyring. Bit heavy for a keyring, but hang it onto your bags with a little clip. So there we go. There's 10 knives that I believe are a great way to start in the collection. It gives you an idea of what traditional knives are like. And when you try to find out the history of these, that's when it gets interesting. It's not just about the knife, it's about the history of the knife. There's no history with now I'm picking these companies, and I love folding knives as much as I like my traditionals. I just happen to collect the traditionals. There's not much history with a Civivi. There's not much history with buck. When you go back to the buck knives, they go back in history. But these modern knives don't have a lot of history, where these do. And it's not a brand history. It's a pattern history. And there's plenty of books out there that you can find how the patterns were started, who invented them. I'm still bleeding away. And that was only a wee nick from an insignificant little blade that's a doctor's knife. But they take a great edge. They really do. So what else have I got for you? There is a little famous, this is a little peanut. Probably going to cut myself again. Oh, I have given myself some nasty cuts with peanuts. There's a little peanut. You have a nice slender clip and a tiny little pen blade. Great little knife for putting in the fifth pocket, and you have two sharpened blades that can do an awful lot of little jobs. And if you want a big knife, here's a Barlow. Here's the Granddaddy Barlow. And I'm going to put it beside the main blade on a normal Barlow and let you just see the difference. How's that? How's that for a knife? Look at the difference in the blade. So you can get them in big blades as well. You can get trappers this size, but this is the Granddaddy Barlow. And what this is great for is barbecues. You know, a cut knife when you have a big fork and you're taking your stuff off and you want to reach in, you don't want to touch the hot meat. Barbecues, absolutely. And again, this is only a £20 knife. It's in ram's horn bone, so it's just bone made to look like ram's horn. Great barbecue knife. Absolutely smashing. And once you've gotten here, and maybe you want to move up and get some better knives, Roughrider have you covered, because they have a new series out, which is their RRR Roughrider Reserve. Now, a lot of them I don't like because they're big, hefty knives, but this one, this is the first one. This is the 001, the first one they come out with. It's just a single blade, big knife. It's a one-hand opener, so you can use your jeans or the side of a table. There's history there again. I'm not going to go into that today. But this is a great big knife with an easy opener. Beautiful blade to work with. Really lovely blade to work with. Much better than what it looks. And you still have a kind of a point at the end there if you need to pry something open. These are running, you know, this one is about £50, but it's in D2 steel. So you've upgraded then away from the budget. But it just lets you know you can go up gradually. You don't have to go up from here to GEC. In fact, I would suggest you don't, because you need to find out if they're knives you're going to use a whole lot or collect. Because once you get up to that higher end of GEC, you're talking big money. So you've got to really like what you want to do. This is where you want to start. And I don't care what your budget is. This is where I would start traditional knives to find out, one, if you're going to like them, two, if you're going to use them, three, if you're going to collect them. Best way to start for anybody. Now, I have about 25 of these in my collection, all different patterns. I don't keep duplicates. Very rarely do I have duplicates. I might have a big and a small one like the Barlow, but I don't keep you. So there is a numerous amount of patterns, and I'm talking hundreds of Roughrider knives. So you'll not be stuck. If this is as far as you ever want to go, you'll not be stuck. I love these in my collection. I have a box here full of GECs. They're just a different animal. Do not, a lot of people say, oh, they're as good as a GEC. In my experience, they're usually not. They're usually not. They can be good, but they're usually not as good as a GEC. These are not as good as a GEC. These are not as good as a case, but they are very good, and they're reasonably priced so that everybody can enjoy this hobby and this part of the hobby that I'm enjoying more and more and more. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll list these top 10 patterns in the description just in case you want to come back. So I'll be starting here, going along, and then I came to this end and back up. So that's the way they'll be listed, 1 to 10, what the pattern was. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody got something out of it. And just seeing beautifully made knives with different covers, with, you know, literally anybody can afford these. And that's the joy, because not everybody can afford even the basic knives, which are maybe starting at, you know, £40, £50. You can afford £15. Well, I hope you can, or you shouldn't be trying to start a hobby if you can't afford that. And there's the honesty. You know, if you want to start a hobby and you want to start a hobby in knives, £15 is not expensive. I mean, the likes of this is only probably, the wee peanut is about £7 or something for that. So it's out there if you want to start. But again, no matter what your budget, start with Roughrider. Find out what patterns you like And if you really like a pattern and you find yourself using it a lot and you want to step up to case or to take the full jump to GEC, at least you have an idea in your head of what that knife's going to feel like in hand and what that knife does for you in your day's work. Because the GEC in 1095, which is a great carbon steel, will last longer than these. But not a huge amount, if I'm terribly honest. It's not a huge amount longer, but they're thinner blades, they cut better, everything about them is better, but you're paying, on average about £150 now for a basic GEC on the secondary market because they're incredibly difficult to get hold of. These work, and if it's a working knife you want and a collection that you can look at, and you can pick different bone handles. That's what I've always done. I've tried to pick different bone handles on most of them. The new Queen ones, have only got this one bone at the minute when I bought these. So I bought, because the Queen ones are a step up from the ordinary Roughrider, I believe. They're a nicer made knife. I'm waffling. What are we at? We're probably nearly half an hour. Thank you very much for watching. I have an old cup of tea sitting down here, a puffer over here. Enjoy your Saturday. And just one last thought. Never forget, remember all those who lost their lives in 9/11 on that fateful day when the world changed, and all the ones who subsequently have lost their lives through many different and varied, whether it's just from their lungs getting damaged during the collapse of the buildings, or the troops that went out fighting, the firefighters, the police, the ambulance, the bystanders, never mind the servicemen, the bystanders in New York in that time, and in other countries around the world. Our allies lost people, not maybe on that day, but they lost it through that same Al-Qaeda, ISIS. They have lost it for 20 years now. I'm one that I believe that what we done was right. We took them basically off the map for 20 years. There wasn't a huge amount of damage they were able to do. Could we have stayed there forever? No. And I don't believe we should have stayed there forever. Either they need to work on it now. But what it does let the world know, that after the Second World War, we said we would never let this sort of thing happen again. We didn't. We really genuinely didn't. We didn't let it happen again. We stood in and we spent 20 years trying to fix it. Their societies are different than ours. But we done the best we could with what we had. And I have no regrets for the troops. I believe they served as heroes. And I hope that Iraq, Afghanistan, and those Middle Eastern countries can sort their own problem out now. But they'll always know that if they go too far, we will come back in again. We will not allow people to be dictated to, beaten and tortured, unanswered. So, for me, my remembrance today is a prayer for all those who lost their lives in 9/11, and that's throughout the world, and what happened before and after by terrorists. They can't win, and we tried to stop them. Take care. Paddy's gone. Bye now.